Hi, everybody. This is Sandy Merich. I welcome you to the CEI webinar on enhancing operations and reducing costs by 30% through Azure migration. Again, I'm Sandy Merich, and I'm a VP of Alliances. I handle a few accounts, and I'm maniacally focused in this area of Microsoft. This session is not only about the movement to Azure, but if you're involved in cloud migration currently, it also can improve your Azure cloud environment. I'd like to introduce you to Rob Creeley. Rob is our fearless leader in the area of infrastructure and security. His team has over 20 years experience, and we'll have a conversation today around the success that him and his team has had in the area of cloud migration. Rob, any comments about yourself, what you like to eat, anything else?
I follow your lead, Sandy.
All right.
You did a good job.
All right, so let's go through the agenda. So we'll talk a little bit about the challenges and readiness. We hear this constantly from our clients about the challenges that they're facing. We'll talk about the implementation ideas and things that we've gone through in our success story. We'll talk about the business impact that it had at Steinhoffels and some of the results. We'll also talk about innovation and new services that you could possibly utilize in the migration efforts. And then where do you start? Whether you're an SMB account or an enterprise account that you're currently involved in Azure migration, where do you start? And then we're going to have a little offer for you, the 10-point readiness assessment that Rob and team will have. So, Rob, first thing is that as many of our clients talk about is the area of why. And one of the interesting questions is around the biggest challenges companies face in planning my cloud migration, and how do they overcome some of these areas. So have a little comments in that area, please.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Sandy. Appreciate you bringing me on to talk about this. But yeah, the challenges business challenge is really what drives people to make change. And moving your legacy on-premise infrastructure to one of the cloud providers is a big change for an IT organization, especially in small to medium-sized businesses. So normally the types of challenges that would confront a CIO or a business leader when trying to make this decision would be, what do we have? We may have aging infrastructure, aging hardware, right? We may have especially for small to medium-sized businesses, we may have bandwidth issues with our IT team, right? I mean, they're usually wearing multiple hats, trying to keep and service the business customers and keep the lights on, so to speak. And this is a pretty involved project. And then there's also the idea of legacy application dependencies, right? So some organizations are running on some custom legacy applications that may have interesting dependencies or blockers to preclude them from making many changes within their ecosystem. So those are definitely some issues and challenges that companies face.
So in that, with our discussions with our client base, it's the readiness of their current team, right? From a migration perspective, is how do you get that current infrastructure ready? So comments there on just how you think a client should go about that.
Yeah, and I mean, and this is even beyond just readiness for migration, but if you're running an IT organization, you should be assessing constantly your inventory and your assets, right? What do I have? What is the age of my hardware? What kind of hardware do I have? What are my applications? What business needs are we solving? What are our most critical applications and functions that we're providing the business? And get an inventory and a stock of what you own, and even from an application and a licensing perspective. The next step would be, we would come in performing an assessment that would take it a step further and help help kind of guide you through, the strategic decisioning, the budgetary concerns that you may have, and also helping to categorize maybe some legacy systems and identifying some quick wins that'll at least be the vanguard or the spearhead to get you into the cloud and see some success early. So it's really the assessment phase up front is a critical component to making a migration successful.
Yeah, and we see that in a lot of cases in the SMB space. There's like a little bit of a cultural shift, right, from on-premise to the cloud, and then some folks that are already want enterprise account just lift and shift some of these things to the cloud. So, talk a little bit about the cultural shift, team, and moving from on-prem to the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a cultural shift. I mean, and if you're talking about the SMB space, then small, medium-sized businesses, if they've never really been in the public cloud sector at all, you may have staff that just don't know what that would entail and may be unprepared to support it. So there's usually some hesitation there and not knowing, do we have to skill up or do we have the bandwidth to be able to handle this? But I think the focus there, it's a pretty easy sell because most IT people, most engineers, et cetera, they're inquisitive by nature, right? They want to solve problems and they want to try and do new things. So it's usually an exciting opportunity to learn new skills. I always used things like this as a way to grow and grow my internal teams and my staff and let them stretch their wings a bit. But also focusing on what does cloud's benefits bring for the business, right? For me, it's all about flexibility, automation, and being able to remove some of the mundane tasks that IT teams do and focus more on driving business value, right? And to me, those are some of the biggest wins of going to cloud computing.
Yeah, the alignment to business value, what we'll be speaking about, but it's so key, right, in this whole movement to the cloud. So we talked about concerns in migration to the cloud. Here's a chart that we could show on some of the evidences, and I think it's bringing up now. Thanks. So maybe you could make some comments about those top areas that that are concerns in migration.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's the concerns of managing like a lot of the challenges for a lot of leaders is, how are we? There's a lot of still, even though cloud is pretty much taking over in the landscape of technology and IT, and most companies have a cloud strategy, there's still some hesitation in a lot of areas, right? There's still some misconceptions about what the cloud is, and there's still, some things that you have to be concerned about and that a lot of leaders are concerned about. And, Flexera, a company that does a lot of cloud analytics and observability type things within that industry, they release a state of the cloud report every year, and some of the things they talk about are top challenges in the managing cloud environments or moving to the cloud, and they'll talk to enterprise clients and SMB and kind of get an idea overall of where we're at. Right, we're in polling season right now, right? So this is a very similar kind of an exercise. But one thing I've noticed over the last 3 or 4 years is that the top three, even between enterprise and SMB, tend to be the same. They're almost always the same. It revolves around security, it revolves around managing cloud cost, and it revolves around lack of expertise or skill set for their internal teams. I mean, those are three consistent things. Security and cost tend to maybe flip 1 and 2. Cost is the new number one, right? Because it's a completely different way of doing business from a financial perspective. But those are really the three things that we consistently see and try to address with our assessments.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this earlier. I was on a call yesterday just around the controlling of movement to the cloud, right? And tell me, Sandy, how do I control the cloud costs? And he had 3 different clouds. How did I control the SaaS costs? And we talked about how to align that with business, just align it with the business environment. So just a sneak peek for some of our viewers, we're going to be talking a little bit about cost management and controlling of cloud costs in the future. You'll see a webinar coming out, and of course, Rob and I will be talking about it.
It's one of my favorite topics.
There you go. So a little bit about implementation. So I know you have Cora on the team on how to enhance security. Enhancements achieved through the migration. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and also any type of, under the Azure umbrella, the type of features to improve the security posture.
Yeah, and again, going back to the chart we saw before, just, you don't have to bring it up, but just, security and compliance and governance are always near the top of the list. And one of the big misnomers is that by moving to the cloud, I hear both angles. You're either, oh, we just move our stuff to the cloud, we're more secure, or, oh my gosh, if I move my stuff to the cloud, my security is way less. And that couldn't be further from the truth in either direction. Some of the core tenets of security, hygiene, and compliance and risk management are just as important in on-prem as they are in the cloud. You still need to bring to bear best practices to control and secure your data and your business information. So some of the things that we do from a security enhancement standpoint is, we leverage native tools in Azure that are already there that you own. You basically can just turn the light switch on and take advantage of them. They're not cost-bearing things like governance policies that control what you can deploy, where you can deploy it, and who can access things. Governance, where you can get visibility against certain compliance and risk frameworks, right? We will turn those on based off of what the particular business needs are. And enhanced identity and access management, which is one of the most important things when it comes to cloud computing. And that means controlling who, both inside the organization and outside of the organization, can access your environment and your data within the cloud environments, right? That needs to be managed proactively. So there are some operational changes that need to come into play to manage these things appropriately to manage your security. But by leveraging some native Azure services that are there, tools that they give you in your tool belt, you can increase your visibility, observability, and your audit posture, right? So some of the tools that they do provide are Azure Policy, I already mentioned. The Defender for Cloud Suite is basically Microsoft's umbrella of security tools that cover everything from endpoint protection to just their EDR type activities, as well as Sentinel, which is their SIM tool. From it's feeding log analytics into a single pane of glass view from a security perspective, and then you can tie it all together with a particular compliance policy that you're going after. So there's a number of different things that we can look at, just built right into Azure to leverage for organizations.
So are you, as we talked about the underneath the Azure umbrella, all the features, capability, what about the pitfalls, shortfalls that companies encounter when they go through this? Because sometimes they may not be aware of all the features, but is there any one or two security pitfalls you're seeing that companies may do?
Yeah, just without any thought or process, just throwing things out there, right, is the biggest thing. And that leads more specifically to overly permissive access. Hey, let's give everybody the keys to the kingdom. We want everybody to log in. Not understanding identity and access management or role-based access control. They don't leverage some of the things that Microsoft gives you out of the box, like global account policies, et cetera. It'd be like, here's a new house, but open all your windows and unlock all your doors and go on vacation, right? You gotta know that you have locks on your doors that you can leverage. You gotta know you have things that you can do to further strengthen and improve the security of your environment. So not having firewalls, you still need firewalls in the cloud. So there are a number there, control ingress and egress of data. So those are the big ones, is just having an unplanned approach to cloud computing.
Okay, good point. I'll be sure I lock the doors before I go on vacation. I wrote that down.
Got to do that.
We're going to talk a little bit about our case study, our success, and all the kudos, of course, goes to Rob and team. A little introduction on Steinhoffels. They're a company that's privately held. They're 100% employee owned, about 600 folks. They have over 14 locations. They sell furniture, mattresses, and they're a leader in the market. And of course, my wife's going to remind me that we need a new mattress. They have stores in Wisconsin, Illinois, and parts of Indiana. And here's the thing I love, and I wrote this down. I love their company values of courtesy, honesty, and outstanding service. And all the people we've worked with, right, Rob, they've provided that. They just have
They
this
personify
ability.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
without a
personify
doubt.
it. Mhm.
And Andrew Steinhoffel, who Rob works with, and he's a tech guy. He's a fourth generation president and family president. So really good relationship, privately held, and maybe we can just go through a little bit of benefits that they've achieved through migrating to Azure and what that's provided.
Yeah, I mean, and they were a very, typical case. I mean, not a massive infrastructure footprint, but definitely they were working with a number of different vendors and providers, both for security, for backups. They had multiple data center colos. Their disaster recovery situation needed some improvements. They wanted to make some improvements with how they were handling data across a number of different systems. They obviously were wanted to keep a high level of security and risk posture, and they were operating on aging infrastructure, right? They were getting close to the point where they had to buy new expensive hardware chassis to handle all of their compute needs, and so they thought it was the right time to maybe look at the cloud and where do they start, right? And so they came to us to say, how can you guys help us make this jump? And so the key things we wanted to achieve with them from a collaborative standpoint was, increased uptime. We wanted to make sure their systems were always running. They were able to process orders. They were able to process their logistics of shipments and et cetera, et cetera. From a scalability standpoint, they wanted to be able to right-size their environment, but also scale when they needed to, right? It's a seasonal business, so they wanted to be able to scale up and down dynamically at different seasons. And then they wanted to have a much more streamlined vendor portfolio, and that could help them with their security and risk posture, right? So the agility, scalability, uptime, and risk posture were all things they wanted to do. And so that's where we approached. That's where they approached us, and we sat down and came up with a strategic plan and assessment of their ecosystem to move them to the cloud. So the main impacts. We by moving to Azure and doing the assessment, we were able to kind of give them that single pane of glass view of their environment. They're able to dynamically scale their environments, especially during the holiday season, up and down. We were able to take a lot of their instances and both right size them, shrink some of the computing needs that some of their applications had, and reduce the cost of ownership, meaning they didn't have to spend as much as they would traditionally have if they were to buy a bunch of hardware to renew a new capital expenditure that would depreciate over a number of years, and then they have to buy it again. You're in the cloud, you're basically biting off what you can chew. It's very much a utility bill. So we were able to right size and get them to an area that made sense for their application needs. And then, from a security and compliance standpoint, we took advantage of a lot of the things we already talked about on that angle and implemented them and we're able to show them an improved security posture. And so, whether it's PCI or SOC 2 Type 2 or any other compliance need, we can now have artifacts and we have proof to help from an audit perspective should they need to go and get an attestation for one of those. So we're helping them in all those areas. And obviously cloud gives you by nature the improved availability and resiliency as you need it based off of Microsoft's data center footprint.
Understand. So I think we talked about some of these core benefits, and they really lead to innovation and really providing the best for their clients, right? As we talked about, one of their values is around outstanding service. So how do we create that outstanding service so that they can have, where their order is, the logistics of their furniture, all those things provide a closer real-time situation for the client and also for Steinhoffel. So any comments about innovation?
Sandy, just additionally to that, by moving to Azure, their IT team was allowed to now focus on other business value-added projects that drive more value for the business instead of worrying about hardware refreshes and fixing a broken hard drive in the middle of the night or fixing some sort of a network connection in the middle of the night.
So any other comments on the innovation and deploying new features I mean, you talked about single, pane of glass, single view in the system, executive information system to be able to see the broadness of the business. Anything else there?
I could talk about that stuff all day, but I think a lot of people would ask, like, well, where do you start? Like, how do you start this? Like, how do you come up with the goals of a migration, right?
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. So, where do we start? So let's talk about the 3 best practices you recommend in considering an Azure migration that people can write down, take back to their job, and maybe even take back to their boss.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty basic from my perspective. It's, we talked about it a little bit. Assess your environment. You have to have a handle on what you own. What do you own? What's your vendor portfolio? What's your asset portfolio? Where are your big pain points? Like, what are the top 5 things that are keeping you up at night? Understand your environment. That's one. Leverage a partner that knows cloud that can help you with an impartial assessment, like understanding your readiness. Like a partner like CEI can come in and go, this is your application portfolio. This is ready to go. Here's what your team needs to look like from a skill perspective. Here's the time it's going to take. Here's the outcomes and benefits we're going after, and help put in a strategic roadmap and plan for you to make it happen. And then the third thing really is understanding what your budgeting strategy is, both people and tech, right? I mean, going into the cloud is a different financial model, and it's understanding CapEx versus OpEx and all those wonderful financial terms. Right. So,
well, I can't say from, kind of being in the bleacher section, watching your team work hand in hand with Steinhoffel's, the ability to have empathy, the ability to have trust, instant trust, as Stephen Covey would say, was really, you could see it. You could see it on the engagement. You could see the trust happening. It just wasn't a one-way street. It was very conversational on decisions and impact on business. And I think your team did an excellent job in that area. So again, that's my opinion from a CEI difference on 2 or 3 things, but what's your thoughts on what we made a difference there?
The approach my team takes, most of us have worked in the corporate side for a lot of years, so we know the pain points that most of our customers are going through. We've lived them, so we try to take that empathy approach when we talk to our clients. We really understand what they're dealing with, but everything from business decisions, business needs, finance, budget, staff, down to all the technology and security compliance concerns. So what we do is every client's a little different. We take a customized approach and we tailor it. We're not going to shoehorn people into this rigid process that we follow with everybody. We come in, find out what the organization needs are. Some companies want us to work side by side with them and have their team learn, and then we hand them the keys to the house. Others say, you know what, we just don't have time to do this work, but we want you guys to do it for us. So can you do the work for us and then help us maintain it when it's done, so that we can focus on driving value for the business? And when we do that as well, so we come up with a customized strategic vision with the client to understand what their needs are, and then we work hand in hand with the team. Sometimes that just means training sessions. Sometimes that means doing everything and documenting it out and just taking it away from them. So that to me is when I work with partners, that's what I always valued as on the corporate side. So we try to bring that as well from our end.
All right, good points. So let's talk a little bit about the future. The elephant, or as Sandy's elephant in the room, is around the trends in cloud infrastructure and security. But of course, we have to talk a little bit about AI and Copilot, the impact you think that'll have. You're seeing it maybe whet people's appetite and using it in certain situations on infrastructure and security. Any comments there?
Yeah, I mean, like everybody's struggling with these. Like, what is AI? How's it going to drive innovation? I mean, we're leveraging AI across the board in a lot of different areas. And I mean, the way I see Copilot and AI are just other tools in the tool belt of services to, we utilize AI specifically in the infrastructure and the security side to help us do manual tasks or do forensics analysis of logs and help with visibility of finding things faster than the human can find them within a lot of data. So there's a lot of value there on the service management side. There's a big push from AI on triaging incidents and issues. But we also see some things coming down the road, low code, no code, like really giving the end user more ownership and capability within these environments without really having to, hit that barrier of entry to understand how to write code or script. And, obviously we're moving away from servers, right? We're moving away from VMs. We're going to serverless infrastructure. So modern applications are being designed differently. And a lot of these application vendors are having to make upgrades to their applications to survive, right?
Well, let's conclude with a little bit about our differentiation. As I said, I watched you through this process and the trust, the empathy that we provided, the insights. And it's not just the insight from an infrastructure and security perspective, but as they review these applications, they may refactor these applications, they may replace these applications. And with CEI's experience in this whole area of app mod, right, of doing over 2,500 engagements really helps a client, right? So we can talk a little bit about that, but and then of course we'll close with our offer, our 10-point cloud readiness discussion. So to conclude a little bit about the differentiation that you saw and your clients' responses to some of this differentiation. Any comments there?
I mean, the biggest differentiators we have is, we act as a partner, right? We're not a vendor. We will help from I say soup to nuts, if people know what that means, meaning we'll come in and help the leader formulate a strategic vision, and we'll help manage that vision and make it a reality all the way through plan, build, and then run and operate. And then we reiterate and run and operate and optimize. So we handle the full gamut. And I think one of the differentiators for CEI especially is, we're not just a cloud infrastructure company, right? We do a lot of different things well. If we find along the way that the client needs help managing their data, or they have an aging data management program, we have fantastic data platform and data management architects on staff that offer that value. If they're looking to improve their DevOps functionality or their DevOps procedures and processes, we have a DevOps team that we can leverage and help. And the same thing on the managed services side. If we need a client is lacking in the manpower to staff 24/7 or to manage an environment 24/7, we can bring that to bear as well. So there's a lot of different on our Swiss Army knife, we have a lot of different widgets that we can bring to bear, which I think is a differentiator for CEI.
Good comments, Rob. So in our final run around here, go around, our offer is what we call a readiness 10-point cloud readiness assessment. This 10-point is not just for folks that are moving to the cloud, but also people that may be in the cloud that are trying to assess some of these areas. Maybe it's around cost. Maybe it's around security and compliance. Maybe you want to analyze your team's skill set. Is it up to par for you to continue to go down this cloud path, right? So we expect this to be around a 45-minute discussion. It should help you out. You can gauge whether or not we're the right partner for you. But I wanted to thank everybody on the line for their attention to this. And please reach out to me. I'll get Rob and I on the call, and we can move forward with you. Again, thank you for your time. And Rob, thank you for you and your team and your success.
Thank you.
That's about it from the
Sandy.
CEI side.